Hello, and welcome back to the Create Me Free podcast. I'm Catherine Versillo, and this is where we explore how health and circumstance impact creativity in many different ways. This first season, we are working through my creative health cartography workbook, which lays out the framework that I work with, exploring how health impacts creativity across 6 different domains. Our first set of episodes was on creative process, and we've moved into how health affects creative medium. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The previous episode, I believe we're on episode 9. I think we're on 9. The previous episode was the free episode giving you the overview of how health impacts medium. And today we're going to do a little bit more of a personal story from me and a little bit of work in the workbook. And then in upcoming episodes, there'll be a little bit more art history, a little bit more theory. So that's where we're at today. Is there anything else I want to say before I dig in? I took last week off, um, which I was just not feeling that well. I was really tired and I could have pushed through, but part of what I'm trying to do is practice what I preach. Sometimes our health interrupts our creativity in ways that it makes sense to listen to the body. So I just wanted to note that I struggled with that a little bit because even though I know better, I want to be super productive, and productive meaning producing a lot. But that isn't actually what feels best. So we're all a work in progress, including myself. So today we're going to talk about creative medium. So if you have the Creative Health Cartography Workbook, which is available through Amazon, or you can get it as a PDF download from me. You can find that information on my website, createmefree.com. If you have it, you'll see that the second category is choice of media, which is defined as the shape. How does your health shape what materials, tools, or forms you work with? So medium and material. And I'm just going to read the little introduction about choice of medium that I've included here so we can kind of orient ourselves to the same thought process here. So, choice of medium. Medium is often treated as a purely aesthetic or stylistic choice. I am a painter. The medium is paint. I write fiction. I work in ceramics. Aesthetic. The naming the material as an aesthetic choice, like that is what you find beautiful. And that may be true, but for artists navigating health challenges, medium choice is frequently a negotiation between desire and capacity, between what you want to create and what your body and mind currently allow you to create. Over all the years of interviews that I've done with other people and research that I've done, I've heard one sentence more times than any others in this area, and it usually sounds something along the lines of, and then I had to change my medium again because of my health. That's a summary. People say it in all kinds of different ways, but when I'm working with people one-on-one, that's one of the things that I listen for because it's often common when people say that they have switched mediums or can't access an old medium. There's usually some tie to health, and we're going to look at that a little bit more today. This statement, when people do say it outright, sometimes it is said with resignation, sometimes with dark humor, sometimes with genuine surprise at how many reinventions one creative life can require. One artist I talked to pivoted from writing to painting during a crisis because words stopped being accessible. That is an experience I've had after I wrote Crochet Saved My Life. There was a period of time where I just had a lot of trouble accessing words, and I ended up crocheting a lot more during that time. Another artist I've spoken with described her need for tactile materials. She specifically talked about the comfort of touching and sorting through physical objects. And it was something that she just didn't just choose it. The needs of her body at that time, being grounded in the body because of her health issues, demanded that from her. It drove her to choose that medium. Each of these examples reflects a different relationship with medium. It might be a forced change. It might be an intuitive pivot. It might be a sensory need. All of these are shaped by health, and all of them carry meaning that is easy to overlook when you're in survival mode. So one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes we notice our health and how it's impacting our creativity. Sometimes we just notice that our creativity has changed and it actually gives us clues to our health. You would think living in a body that you understand your health and it's present to you at all times, but often it's really not. I know for me, as someone with recurring depression, I haven't always known when I was depressed. It isn't, I don't wake up one day and suddenly all of the symptoms are there. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes things feel a little off. I feel a little tired. I feel a little irritable. I don't want to do things. And after some period of time, oh, my work has changed. My life has changed. What's going on? I think maybe my health has changed. So sometimes it isn't as clear. Sometimes we work forwards versus backwards, medium to health or health to medium in terms of just understanding ourselves. Um, if you look at the workbook, the next thing is a selection from one of the interviews that I've done. So if you have the workbook, you can look at that. But right now, I am going to talk about the medium biography, and this is one of the things the workbook kind of guides you to work with. And when I work with people one on one, it's something that we sometimes spend a lot of time on. It's something that I have spent time on myself, and I haven't done it recently. I thought about doing it before I came on here to do this episode, but part of what I want to do with this podcast is just kind of work in real time and talk more from the moment than from too much prepared material, so that you can really get a sense of who I am. The reason for that is there's a lot of reasons for that. It's how I prefer to work. I kind of like putting the messy me out there instead of some polished version, but also in case you might want to work with me one on one, you'll get a sense, at least somewhat, of how I work at the moment. So that's kind of my thought process there. And so, the medium biography, what is a medium biography? A medium biography is a chronological account of your creative mediums across your entire life to the best of your recollection. You pay attention to when each medium arrived, how long it stayed, when it changed, or if it left, when and how it left. And you pair that with looking at a timeline of your health conditions paired against each period. And sometimes there's overlap and sometimes it's not as clear, but it's interesting to lay it out. It's the biography of your medium in a chronological order, which you then put against a chronology of your health. When you lay this out across the entire arc of a creative life, the health layer that was often invisible in any given period, often we can look back and see how it becomes visible. So with depression, that is something I was able to see looking back. I was undiagnosed until my late 20s. And when I was diagnosed, it kind of rearranged things in my mind. I looked back and I could see how that was impacting me in my work, in my life. Recently, a lot of women in particular, a lot of people, but a lot of women in particular are becoming aware that they're undiagnosed ADHD. And that kind of late diagnosis just reorganizes the way you think about the things you've experienced. So people I know are coming at their work from a new perspective. Oh, I did this for 30 years. Now I'm understanding that part of why I did that was because of the health, because of the ADHD. So the biography of the medium is looking at all your mediums and looking at your health as you understand your health right now, and just trying to kind of look at them together. The kind of two different angles or ways of looking at your creative past, and it might provide new insights that can be helpful for moving forward creatively. So, excuse me. um, Medium history. So, what I'm looking at doing here is moving through a series of prompts that I am trying to locate on my screen, and I can't quite find them. There they are. Um, It's a series of prompts that are part of the medium biography. I'm going to work through them through my own experience, just from what I can remember as I'm speaking to you right now. So it's kind of an abbreviated version. Often you'll do this on paper, and you might come back to it several times. It kind of reminds me, honestly, one of the Julia Cameron, who did The Artist's Way, one of her books might be Vein of Gold, but I'm not sure. I think it is. Um, In fact, it might even there might also be an exercise in the artist's way where you're asked to look at the key things that happened during like the first 5 years of your life, and then from 5 to 10, 10 to 15. And I know when I've done that, it's different each time. And so if you go back, you can layer more onto it because you notice and think about different things at different times. Memory is an interesting thing, isn't it? Okay, so your medium biography. You will move through your medium history chronologically, and we're going to work from just 6 prompts. So the first prompt: what is the first medium that you remember making as a child? It asks, what does it require of your body? What did it feel like? What happened to it? Several things come to mind. I'm going to say friendship bracelets, which actually I think there was earlier, coloring and other things that I did when I was younger than that. But friendship bracelets are really what stand out to me as like a really strong one for me. I started making friendship bracelets in like fourth grade, maybe third grade, and kept making them for a couple of years. But I would say fourth grade was like the main time, and it was those friendship bracelets. They were made usually with that kind of plasticky material, so it's not yarn or thread. It's I don't know what it is, but it feels more like plastic. But it's still very pliable. And now I understand that most of what I was making was a form of macrame, but I did not know that at the time. But I learned how to make it, and I just um yeah, just the knotting process. I remember being super yeah, just super focused, super, I could sit down and do that for a really long time and be immersed in it. Um, and I tried to sell them for a little while, which I suppose kinda marks a first attempt at monetizing my creativity. I was not very successful at it. We could dig deeper into that psychologically or creatively, but, I'll just leave it at that for now as something that might be that potentially could be worth exploring in my life at some point. But in terms of what it required of my body, it was the hand dexterity, which is really great for working on your motor skills. I don't remember being super picky about colors, which is interesting. I would think now there's like selection of colors. I do remember liking neons at that time, so maybe that was in my thinking, but I'm not 100% sure. And then what happened to it? I did it for a few years, and then I didn't do it for a really long time, and I don't know why that is. I think sometimes, at least for me as a kid, I just got really immersed in stuff, and then it kind of fades, and then sometimes I come back to it. So it was actually friendship bracelets I thought of first. So if you've heard my story at all, um, when I discovered crochet in my 20s, I was going through a period of extremely undiagnosed bad depression. And I read somewhere to think about the things you like doing when you were about 10 years old, 8 years old. And what came to mind was friendship bracelets. Then I thought about crochet and actually started crocheting then, but it was initially remembering somehow that tactile, weaving together movement, motion, focus of creating friendship bracelets. And I do think there is something there too about them being friendship bracelets, about it being, even though you're doing it alone, you're connected to others in that process. I made them with my friends. I exchanged them with my friends. That wasn't a huge key part of it. Like a lot of it was just making it and saving it. And then I don't know what happened to them later. But I do think there was at least some component in there of the social or connected aspect, which is interesting to think about now when I think um, about depression and how crochet came back into my life and connected me to lots of different people in an interesting way. So I'm going to stop there with prompt one. Um, but prompt two: the medium or mediums of your teens and early 20s. I have a few here. What drew you to them, what they gave you, what you were navigating in your health at the time, including your mental health, life circumstances, what was going on with your body. So now I'm looking at my teens and early 20s. So I'm going to start with I'm going to, I think I have two things I'm going to probably talk about that come to mind immediately. So one is writing letters. So I got my first pen pal through the mail. I was in seventh grade when I got my first one. She was from Canada. Her name was Melanie. Um, and There used to be these in teen magazines, pre-internet, there was things where you could send away that you wanted a pen pal, and then you got assigned a pen pal, they sent you their address and you started writing. So, started writing, and that became a humongous part of my life, particularly late in high school and for a year or 2 after high school. I became super immersed in writing letters, and at one point, I had over 100 pen pals. I just I would go to school and not pay any attention in school and just write letters all day long. Yeah, just thinking about it, and it turned into a few different art forms as a result. So the main thing at first was writing the letters, and it was really kind of like, um, sometimes it was connection, sometimes it was I'm telling this specific person what I'm doing, what my life is like, and asking them about their life, but sometimes it was more general, like a blog would be now. That blogs didn't exist at the time, so it was kinda like that, sent to one person, but because I was writing to so many, kinda sent to lots of people. It's kinda hard to explain, but it was a personal diary form of expression that was also going out to other people and then receiving something back as well and learning. I learned so much from people about just life and thoughts and books and writing and places they lived. Um, that ended up becoming an interest in mail art. So we started sending each other what were called friendship books at the time. And then there was also slams. I forget what else there was. But in any case, they were these little books that you made. They were like paper. You took pieces of paper and you stapled them together or glued them together, whatever. You made your own little handmade books. And the basic idea was so I would make my book and I would put my address on the front of it and I would say a few little things about me. And I would say, I'm looking for pen pals, write me. And I would send it to one of my pen pals. They would add their information on the next page. They would send it to a different pen pal. They would send it, they would send it, they would send it. That was how we would find other pen pals. That's how I ended up with over 100 pen pals. You would find people that had things that interested you and you would write to them and see if they wanted to write back to you. And it was always just really interesting crafting those first letters, the who am I? I mean, the equivalent now, I guess, would be like online profiles, social media profiles, dating profiles online, the kind of curating of yourself, looking at yourself. But it was different because it was the slower handwritten letter form. And then those books also became pieces of art. I really wish that I still had some of those. I am not a saver. I have journals and I have scrapbooks, but I tend to not save a lot of extra stuff. Don't I don't know. I like to get rid of stuff. So I don't have those. And it would be really cool to see what they looked like because they were basically, I would make little collage pages and I would remember pulling out just things I liked from magazines, but also like I used to drink a lot of Snapple at the time and I would take the Snapple wrapper and add that to it. And then we'd write on there things we liked, things we were into, bands. And as a teenager, those things kind of try to signify to the world who you are, your identity, but they were also just really visually creative. Markers and stickers. Oh, I love going to the sticker store. I just talked to someone about this recently about going to the sticker store, and I guess it was a stationery store, but there was whole sticker sections where there was like walls of sticker rolls, and you would tear off the amount of stickers that you wanted, and it was just delightful. Um, yeah, so that was the writing of the letters and then the mail art that went with it, and then that was when I discovered zines also. One of the pen pals sent me a zine, I became really interested in zines, we were all sending them back and forth. That was really how I learned about a lot of stuff at the time, animal rights and, I don't know, just more like socio-political stuff, and but then there was the creative element of it as well, of the handcrafted zine. So, those were the 3 like, really main mediums, and it's really interesting now to think back because friendship bracelets and then friendship books and pen pals, it was, again, connected to other people in this way, and it was and it wasn't. It connected me to lots of people, but then it was also something I did alone. It's just really interesting to think about that since, that's also a lot of what I do now. I mean, that's what this podcast is, right? I'm essentially talking to myself in this room, and hopefully you are listening. Someone out there is listening. That reminds me of the Dar Williams song. Uh, are you anyway? Tangent. Um, so hopefully, and we could connect, and you could email me, or this is on Substack, createmefree.substack.com. You could message, leave a comment there, any of those things. And it's kind of interesting to think about how the creative mediums that I was drawn to as a child were kind of about using my personal experience to connect with other people, and I'm still doing that. So that's interesting. The other medium I wanted to mention from that time is I was making collages, and specifically making, I was getting really into photography, and I was doing double exposure photography a lot of the time. And it was with a manual camera. I would take a photo and then rewind the film and then take a photo on top of it. And then after the entire film was done, I would have it developed and it would come back, and it was a very slow process. And then I would find out what I had, and then I would take those finished, completed, double exposed photos, and I would lay them all out into a collage. Sometimes I would lay them out and photograph those and double expose and do again. So I had, on my Substack somewhere you can see, or maybe it's on my catherinerissillo.com website, somewhere you can see my Georgia O'Keeffe double exposures. I came across those again recently, and it was really fun for me to look back at those. I had really fallen in love with her work, and I would double expose. I would get books from the library, and I would photograph images of her. They were usually the Stieglitz portraits. I would photograph those and double expose them with photos of her art, like the flower or skull um, works. And then I created a big collage for myself of those. So um, that really comes to mind as just a different medium, in the sense that the first one that felt really, really visual, not narrative necessarily. And I liked the collecting. I liked the going to the library, figuring out the books, bringing the books home, looking through the photos, collecting, choosing, selecting, curating, putting it together and reconfiguring it into my own design, and then reconfiguring that in a new different kind of collage. So um it was more of a magpie process, I guess, and more visual than a lot of the writing stuff. So that was different at that time for me. Um What were you navigating in your health at that time? So that would be when depression was starting to get pretty bad. And yet it was undiagnosed. I didn't know that's what it was. I was mostly trying to outrun my depression, I guess you would say. Um, it was manifesting a lot in physical physical illness. I was tired all of the time. I was achy. I remember having back pain. I would go to a massage therapist. Um, yeah, I thought I was convinced it was a physical thing, and looking back learned it really wasn't. It was a somatic expression of emotional things that were going on for me. Um, and life circumstances. I was struggling to find my identity and what was right for me. I couldn't find work that I liked. I wanted to do something super creative as a career, and I couldn't figure out how to make that happen. I had dropped out of high school, had some self-esteem stuff with that, some trauma stuff was surfacing. There was just a lot. And it's just hard being a teenager, early 20s. I think that relates to the medium. Again, there was the connection in terms of the nail art and the self-expression. A lot of that was figuring out my identity and putting like a name to it. And then I think the collage and the photography was just starting to move into doing something a little more intuitively, and starting to bring that into my life. I think I needed to somewhere in me, I knew that I could not solve the problem of my head in my head, that I was going to need to intuitively and somatically heal. I would not actually realize that outright for more than a decade. But I think part of me knew, and I think there was a sense at the time of the intuitive coming out in that visual work. So, yeah. Prompt 3. Think of any medium that arrived because of circumstance or necessity rather than aesthetic choice. A medium you came to because it was available when something else was not. Maybe it was cheaper. Maybe it was able to be done in the space that you had. Um, I Guess I would have to think back a little bit. I'd probably have to spend more time on this one. The crochet is the thing that first comes to mind, because I've spoken and written so much about how it was accessible. Um, it was something I could learn on my own. It was something I could do on my own in my house. The materials aren't that challenging. So I guess that relates. I did not necessarily choose that for aesthetics. I chose that because of the process of it and what it did for me at the time, and it was portable and it was affordable. Um, I have to think more about how it really ties into my health. It's one of those things where I've said it and written it so much that, if I'm gonna be honest with myself, I need to dig a little deeper. But since we are on camera right now, gonna just leave that there for now. But it gives you a sense of kind of the things that you might think about if you were doing a medium biography. Prompt 4, any medium that changed significantly or that you stopped working in during a health change. And what did that transition look like? Was it conscious? Did you only register it afterwards? Um, I stopped doing photography for a long time. I still took photos, but there was a point in time where I wanted to make a career of photography. I had a bunch of ideas for it, and then I ended up getting hired when I was 19 to travel around Arizona to all the little towns that had Walmarts. Then I would set up a photo studio and take portraits of people's children for a week, and I would move on to the next town. And I thought that was kind of a way into photography, and it was not at all. It gave me travel experience, though. Um, I always had a camera and I always took pictures, but I didn't really think of it as a creative medium. And I probably didn't do collage for a long time either. Um, Mapping out how that relates to my health, intuitively, I think maybe I think I've always had a push and pull of how much I want to give to the nonverbal, to the somatic, to the visual, to the intuitive. I think it's always been really strong for me underneath, but also that's maybe frightened me at different times. And words, for whatever reason, writing feels more graspable, more tangible, more almost controllable, I guess. And I think probably the breaks that I have taken from the really visual photographic and collage work were probably in part because I didn't want to go to those places. I didn't want to go to the unknown symbolic places that show up when I do that kind of work. Um, just got chills. I never know what's going to happen when I get on these podcasts and what I'm going to say. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Prompt 5 is the medium or mediums you are working in now. What do they ask of your body? What do they give you? Where is the relationship easy? Where is it negotiation? So I am working in, it's really interesting to think about. So when I think of what I'm doing creatively, a lot of what I'm doing is, again, working with people or doing self expression that ties in with other people. I'm doing a lot more of the collaborative right now. I'm doing more workshops, more integrated stuff. I think because my mental health feels really pretty stable right now. I feel pretty sure of myself. I feel grounded enough that I can interact with people in that way. I'm doing a lot of collage and a lot of visual work right now, a lot through the mapping services that I do. I'm doing a lot of intuitive work for other people. So when I do my mapping services, we have a conversation and then I make an intuitive collage map for you as a client, very visual, very intuitive, trusting myself to allow things to surface and not necessarily having to name exactly what they are. I think it's interesting that that is something that's come up for me. What they ask of your body. For a while, I was trying to do these collages digitally, and I still do fool around with some digital stuff, collage stuff digitally, but I keep going back to making them by hand. I find that in order to be really intuitive and grounded in the work, I do have to actually physically cut and tape by hand. Um, so it's asking me to be present in my body, really, is what it's asking of my body. And then the other mediums, I mean, I'm doing this podcast, I'm doing stuff that's more public facing in that way, but not necessarily interactive in the moment. And that requires a certain level of confidence or willingness, vulnerability to put myself out there. It's a little more uncomfortable than writing for me because writing is just something I've done for so long publicly. Um, yeah, and then writing, I'm exploring different. I was working on like a spoken word piece the other day, which was something I hadn't done in a long, long, long time. It's interesting to see where that might go. Um, so I think I'll leave that there. But if I was going to really dig into this, I would spend more time looking at all of my different mediums and really trying to think about what they give me and what they require of me. Finally, the last prompt is asking you, is there a meeting in the medium that you would like to be working in, but your current health makes it difficult to access? And when I was really young, I used to write stories like fiction, and I don't know that that's something I want to do. I don't feel a strong pull to do it, but that is what comes to mind as something that, like, I don't write fiction um, really anymore. And I think, does my health make it difficult to access? My circumstances maybe do. I think because I do so much concrete nonfiction writing that I've been doing for so long, research based writing, it is more difficult for me to transition into more creative writing in that way. Again, I don't even know that I want to, but I do think the circumstance of regularly writing that way makes it challenging to pick up a different medium. Um, a different answer is music. I've known so many musicians in my life. My partner's a musician, and I just literally do not hear music in the same way that someone who is musical hears it. I just I've had people, like, I'll sit down and people will point out to me, okay, in a song, this is, can't you hear the drums right here? I cannot parse out the different instruments. The idea that I would know what a C note is and how to get to it is like beyond, it's like magical to me. I could never, I just can't. I did play the flute when I was a kid. I hated it. I don't even know if I hated it. I wanted to be good at it and I was so not good at it. And for various reasons, it was very hard for me not to be immediately good at things. But so I would go to these lessons and I would just cry like the whole time. I found it so frustrating. But I think I would like to have music in my life as a medium at some point. Maybe playing piano. I taught myself to play a little bit as a kid and never went back to it, but I think that maybe is where I would go with that. And does my current health make it difficult to access? I think it's not my health per se, but it's that knowledge that I don't have that kind of ear. Um So it'd be challenging in a different way, I guess, because of my senses, my hearing, maybe. Um, yeah, I don't know, something to think about. It's also like, when I think about that, like, I would never wanna make a career of music. I don't necessarily need to make a body of work, but I think I'd like to introduce it into my life as part of just my creative world, maybe? Um, yeah. Even, like, songwriting, I've thought about songwriting over time and have not done it, and I think there is a mental thing. Theater too. Oh, theater just came to mind. Um, I wanted to be involved in theater in some way. I actually took acting classes as a kid too. I forgot about that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there, right? It's really interesting to think about these different mediums in this way. I encourage you to kind of work through these prompts yourself and see what emerges for you. It's really interesting. I do want to name, I should have named this at the beginning, that sometimes doing this kind of work can surface like grief. Because sometimes you've really clearly lost a medium, and sometimes there's been a really clear change in your health, or stuff that you've had to let go because of your health, or way of seeing things that's different that way, and that can surface grief, um, which is not necessarily bad or good. It's just something that you might have to work with. Different things come up for different people, right? So, oh, it's interesting to work through. Okay. Switching gears. The next section I wanted to bring to the podcast, it's called Identifying the Comfort Medium. So once you've gone through the whole biography, and you might already know without going through the biography, I think the biography can help surface different things, but what is your comfort medium? So when you look at your entire history of creative life, usually there is a medium that keeps showing up more steadily than others. It's the comfort one. It might not be the one you're most known for or most celebrated. It might not be your primary ones. Like for me, people think of me as a writer. I think of myself as a writer, but it's not necessarily that one that is my comfort medium. The comfort medium is what does the hands reach for when like writing, for example, isn't available? What has a lower threshold to get into? What's more forgiving of a relationship? And for me, that is crochet. There was a time where it wasn't, and that was largely because I was trying to make a business out of it, and that shifted the relationship that I had with the materials. Um, but that was very short lived. So overall, I would say crochet is my comfort medium. I don't find it hard to get back into. I know the stitches, it's very rhythmic for me. I don't feel any obligation to myself to make anything specific or do this a specific way or share it with anybody. It's just very comfortable, very accessible. And it's interesting to find that out about yourself and think about what it offers you that other mediums maybe don't. Um, you might want to think about your nervous system. So crochet is very, very calming to the nervous system. Um, I will say that it intersects with other physical health in certain ways. So if I'm having physical pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, it makes crocheting more difficult, or I can crochet, but then I feel more pain. So it's not always simple, but in general, I find it fairly physically easy to do. I can be fatigued and still crochet. Um, it's for me very calming, like I said, to the nervous system. It's relaxing. It's meditative, and so um, knowing that, I try to make it really accessible to myself. Like if I'm traveling, I travel with crochet. Even if I haven't been crocheting lately, I will bring yarn with me just because I might. I want it to be accessible for me. It's my comfort medium. It's also important for me to know about that because when other things aren't working, it can be really healing just to go back to that medium that does work. So if writing isn't working, collage, whatever, if I'm working in photography and it's not working for me, or it's challenging, or it's stressful, or it's just bringing up stuff or activating me, whatever it is, um, or if I can't access it because of health things. So sometimes I get brain fog, and so I can't do the higher level thinking that is required from a lot of writing. Things I can't access, mediums I can't access as a result of my health. I can return to my comfort medium. It doesn't ask anything of my brain specifically in that same way. So it's good to know your comfort medium because it's good to know that you can always go back to something, right? And rely on that as your comfort, just like a comfort food. Um, it's also good to think about sometimes our health does interrupt our comfort medium, and that can be really difficult and really painful emotionally, really a lot of grief around that. And it's important to process that grief and really think about that. Yeah. I think the more we're aware of what's going on with us, the more we can adapt. And so we can grieve a comfort medium that we've lost and start figuring out what might work as a comfort medium now. It's kind of hard because sometimes you have to try different things and you won't know till later if you come back to them if they really are a comfort medium, but you can try, coloring, not coloring, more like doodling, Zentangle type coloring, I guess, is something I come back to every now and then. It's not a super common one for me, but I would say that it has some level of nervous system comfort for me, that I do come back to sometimes. Um, yeah. Okay. Um, what else did I want to share with you? We're about 40 minutes into the podcast today. I'm gonna pull up the workbook and see if I wanted to share anything else today or if we're gonna close here. So in Medium, then this chapter, I give you some of this Medium biography stuff to kind of look at, but then I also just have some other questions. What do you currently create with? How did you arrive at it? What does it offer you? So it's those same questions in a more present tense. Just kind of, I find when you just put it down, when you write it down or say it, you start thinking about it differently. And then thinking about your adaptations, when you have had to adapt your medium, what has that taught you about creativity? I think this can be really interesting. What has your medium taught you? What has changing your medium taught you? We can learn a lot um, from just noticing what's going on with us. I think that's all I want to do for now. There's other exercises and stuff in the workbook, but we can get to those in a different podcast episode. Um, yeah, and I guess I've probably already implied this if I haven't said it, but this idea of a medium biography, it's like a living document. It's a living, you don't just do this once and then that's it. It's something you can keep coming back to and understanding at different layers. And it can give you new insights about how you might want to work creatively. I have a complicated relationship with writing and looking at it in more depth about when it has and hasn't worked for me and how that relates to my health helps me be able to navigate the times when it's more challenging for me. I'm really sitting right now with what I mentioned earlier, which was just really realizing how the connection with others, the self expression that connects me to others that was part of the pen pal thing and the zine thing and now the podcast thing, there's really a thread there for me. And I want to sit with that more and really look at how that ties into my health. Because I know there has been periods of time where I have felt really isolated because of my mental things that were going on, mostly depression, but then some of the thinking, just some of the stuff that goes along with that. And it kind of feeds into it loops, right? So I feel depressed, so I isolate myself, so I'm lonely, so that makes me feel more lonely, makes me feel more depressed, blah blah blah. I know that these symptoms tie in with what I write, how I share my writing if I go really lay that out. I think I can gain really interesting information for myself. And again, this can be useful in different ways. It can be the next time that I notice I'm feeling a certain way, or the next time I notice my medium changing, it might be a clue for me because now I'm aware of this. Or it might just be a way to better understand the ins and outs of how a medium works for me, so that when I'm working with it, um, I just have that deeper level of understanding. Okay. um, Yeah. Okay. So that is my little story of my medium biography, just a little bit. I hope that you found it somewhat interesting and also that it inspires you to think about the mediums you have worked with, are working with, and might want to work with, and how that relates to your body, your health, your mental health, your mind, your circumstances. And if you do that and you want to share any insights with me, I would love to hear from you. You can comment on createmefree.substack.com or you can send me an email. My information's there. I am also, if you are interested in working on this stuff with me, like you need someone to discuss this kind of stuff with, this is what I do in my mapping sessions. So if you look at the Creative Health Cartography page on either createmefree.substack.com or createmefree.com, if you look at either of those, you can get more information about how to work with me. And we would work on Medium just like this. We would go through exercises and start to map things out and see where you're at and see if I can help you navigate that creative train a little bit better. That's part of the work that I do. So I think that's it for now. I will be back next week. We'll continue working on creative medium a little bit more and from a new angle. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.